Okay, we're going to start our webinar, and we welcome all of you to a discussion that involves biomedical, bioethics and medical humanities, and we'll talk a bit about our Master of Arts program here at Case Western Reserve University. We're glad you could join us and really appreciate your being with us. I'm going to hand things over to Sam Hamilton, who is Assistant Director of Enrollment Management for the School of Medicine. And she's going to introduce the webinar a bit more. Leah and I'm Mark Aulisio, the Chair of the Department of Bioethics. And then we'll get rolling. Leah and I will carry the ball from there.
Perfect. Thank you, Mark. We're going to get to talk a little bit about the different things that are going to happen in the webinar and how to be able to ask questions. So today we're going to go over the actual Case Western Reserve School of Medicine in a little bit more detail. We're going to also get to talk about the Masters in Bioethics and Medical Humanities from an academic perspective. Then we're going to get to talk about Cleveland. And then last but not least, we're going to get to talk about the application process and its deadlines. And then of course, we'll touch on student assistantships, and then we'll get to the fun part, which I think everybody's really excited for, which is the Q&A. The best way to chat the Q&A is you're actually going to go to the Q&A chat window to do this. And so when you do that, you're going to have, it'll look like two little chat bubbles, and you'll be able to send all your chat questions through there. If you send it through the actual chat, it won't work as well. So we highly recommend that you're just sending it through the Q&A chat. So then I'll turn it back over to Mark and Leah.
So thank you very much. There is a little bit of guidance on the Q&A feature. Do you want to mention anything else about it, Leah?
No, just, as we're going through with the Q&A, feel free to ask your questions. Some we may answer as we go. Most we're going to save till the end, just so we can make sure we get through everything as we're able to. And yeah, we can continue to move forward then.
Very good. Okay. So I'm Dr. Mark Aulisio. I'm the Susan E. Watson Chair and Professor of Bioethics in the Department of Bioethics, which is part of the School of Medicine here at Case Western Reserve University. And I also direct a Center for Biomedical Ethics at Metro Health Medical Center, which is one of our 4 clinical affiliates, along with University Hospitals, Cleveland Medical Center, the Cleveland Clinic, and the Lewis B. Stokes VA. My background is really in clinical bioethics, and I've spent the better part of 25 years doing clinical bioethics and educating clinicians on ethical issues and how they might address them, chairing ethics committees, doing ethics consultation, and then of course, working on the academic side, teaching medical students, our MA students, doctoral students in bioethics and medical humanities, and also, publishing and contributing to grant-funded and other work in the field. So that's a little bit about me, and my colleague, Dr. Leah Jeunnette, will tell you a little bit about herself.
So I'm the Assistant Director of Education and a Senior Research Associate in the Department of Bioethics. I'm also a clinical ethicist at University Hospitals, Cleveland Medical Center here in Cleveland, Ohio. I've been in the department, it'll be 5 years this fall. I'm also a graduate of the Masters in Bioethics and Medical Humanities program.
Yay.
Actually, I was talking with Dr. Aulisio the other day. We were cleaning out some files here in the department, and we found an old notebook from when I was a student.
So wild.
It's so wild. It's been over a decade since I've graduated, but it's wonderful to be working here and to be involved in the education and be involved in clinical ethics and research, and to just participate with colleagues and also be involved with students as well. So I've enjoyed, being here for the last 5 years and hope to be here many more as well. So.
Well, we're lucky to have you, Dr. Jeunnette. So I'm glad you're on board, but it was interesting looking over your notes from your clinical observations back in 2009. Okay. A little bit about our School of Medicine, because we're in the School of Medicine. US News is just one of many rankings, but it's the one that's best known. It's definitely not the most rigorous, because a lot of it is reputational. But our School of Medicine, even in US News, is number one in Ohio, top 25 in the US. I'll tell you, a little bit more about it. More rigorous rankings in biomedicine and the life science, for example, based on publications and impact. Leiden University in the Netherlands does a ranking. Case was the School of Medicine, and the constellation of biomedicine and life sciences here at Case was 8th in the United States and 16th in the world, just to give you a sense. Our social work program, Mandel School, top 10, health law program, top 10. And I don't think you could find anybody who would honestly say that our bioethics program isn't either at the top or very near the top of programs in bioethics and medical humanities. We also boast of, and proudly, of a PhD program in bioethics. It was the first in the country and one of very few. And we have a strong undergraduate program as well, with a minor in bioethics and medical humanities. So there's lots to be proud of here. And I'll throw out a prop for the med school. On the educational side, our medical school in the last 3 years has recruited classes that averaged MCATs from 96th percentile to 98th percentile. I've got to leave out last year, the previous 3 I know, but that's because of the COVID weirdness. But it's pretty amazing place for medical education. So if you're interested in ethical and humanities issues in and around biomedicine and life sciences, it's hard to be at a better place. Okay, so why study bioethics and medical humanities? In a way, this is weird, because when we started doing these webinars years ago, in some way, this was a more important question for us to cover. Now, folks, if you're on this webinar, you already have some sense that, wow, the practice of biomedicine and the life sciences is riven through with value-laden issues, right? So what's been front and center for the last, almost 2 years, it's painful, the COVID-19 pandemic. And we've seen all kinds of interesting ethical issues, allocation of scarce medical resources in ICUs. Right now in Northeast Ohio, like many areas, we're very worried about not just ICU beds, but hospital beds generally. How should you allocate these scarce medical resources? It's not a strictly medical decision. It depends on the values you adopt and how you instantiate those values in your allocation schema, which is part of the reason you see so much discussion of this in the broader media, right, in the popular media. Questions about vaccine allocation. Right now, boosters, controversial. Should you get a booster? Who should get a booster? Should we even be talking about boosters here in the developed world, or the so-called, we used to call it the first world, when so much of the rest of the world doesn't even have the first round of defense against COVID. So these are complicated questions. They're value laden. Technology advances. I mean, we saw the amazing advance with mRNA breakthrough for vaccinations here with Pfizer and Moderna and some others. But we have these questions about, yep, we can do X. We're technologically able, but should we? And sometimes we don't spend enough attention thinking about the should part of this, right? Other questions that are really important to take seriously socially. How can we best promote justice and respect for persons in research and clinical practice? And ultimately, what kinds of values should inform policies and practices in biomedicine and life sciences, whether that's on the clinical side with patient care, or the research side in the laboratory, or where they intersect in research with patients, right, with human subjects. All really critical, important questions. Why would you want to study it? Well, you might pull out, you might identify this as a niche area to fit your career interest. So your trajectory is, say, medicine or nursing or social work. You go, yes, but before I go there, I want to spend a year doing a deep dive into the bioethics and medical humanities issues that will be in and around my professional practice. We have lots of students who do this. In fact, we've had students tell us, a number of students, that they think everyone who goes into one of the health professions in an ideal world would do a program like ours before going in. The other thing that you see happening, so you can carve out a niche area, you can enhance your future professional practice. You can be on your way to a PhD where, you really want to be somebody who self-identifies as a bioethicist, or you want to work at the intersection of public health. You want to end up being in an academic setting or a clinical setting, doing ethics consultation and clinical ethics. But a big one is this last bullet, which is we have lots of students who come to our program and they take the year to kind of find their way. Yes, enhance their academic resume, strengthen their applications for wherever they're going, get good letters of recommendations, get kind of the case stamp, which does matter. I mean, it's the world we live in, right? But some folks end up saying, you know what? I thought I wanted to be a nurse, or I thought I wanted to be a physician, but I don't actually want to do that. I thought I was going to be a JD, but I think I'd rather be a PhD. But the one thing that really holds our students together, and this is what you should think about if you're thinking about our program, is, do these issues grab your attention? Do you want to make bioethics and medical humanities a substantial part of your career ultimately, whether it's on a professional track to a professional school or a PhD or something else? If the answer is yes, then this is a really good program for you. Okay, let's push forward. The program itself, been around 26 years. It's amazing, hard to believe, one of the first in the country. If you come here, do the program 2 full-time semesters, you will complete the program in those 2 full-time semesters. In a nutshell, we have core requirements. Our foundational courses, which is a core seminar that runs Foundations 1, Beth 401, Foundations 2, Beth 402, first semester, second semester, 6 credit hours each, 12 total combined, right? Where we do thematic areas in bioethics and medical humanities. You can imagine what they might be, approaches and methodologies, issues at the beginning of life, issues at the end of life, justice issues, public health and bioethics, and then some topical areas like research ethics or neuroethics. That's the core seminar, and everybody has to take that. We also have, as a critical central piece, our clinical ethics rotations. Required 1.5 hours each semester for kind of the default program, credit hours, that is 160 hours total. And those are carried out with our clinical affiliates. So ideally, you'll have 80 hours at a public hospital like Metro Health Medical Center, which is the county hospital of Cuyahoga County, or the Louis B. Stokes VA. And then 80 hours at a private hospital like the Cleveland Clinic main campus, or Cleveland Medical Center. We do try to get you a palliative care and a hospice experience as well. That varies depending on availability and semester. So those are core elements, right? And if you put those together, you've got really 15 hours accounted for, you'll see there's a little wiggle room with one of those clinical ethics rotations as we talk about other concentrations. We also have short-term study abroad electives, at least in a normal year. We're hoping that we'll have them again this year. We're planning for them, but you never know with what's going on with COVID, right? And the Delta surge right now. But those tend to be with people, institutions, say in Amsterdam or Paris or Granada, we'll talk a little bit more later, that we've developed really strong relationships with, and they tend to be either over winter break, spring break in March, or what we call kind of second spring, the May term in May. And they tend to be 1 week to 2 week intensives that are taught largely by our collaborating faculty in country. We do some prep and we do some follow-up, but it's one of the neat things about that is the immersion, the in-country immersion. We do have assistantships. They're not traditional assistantships like you would see in a humanities program. They tend to be tuition waivers, and they come with the expectation of, you know, modest service to the department, either as a help with teaching or research or some other effort. Okay, we have 2 concentrations in our program. You don't have to do a concentration. So there's really, you know, the default you might call a bioethics concentration, right? But if you want to do a concentration, you can do medicine, society, and culture, which really explores, so this explores the social medicine, medical humanities side of our program. And you get into issues of concepts of illness, well-being, how are these terms used across different communities, cultures, in different professions. We draw on scholars from across the university to engage on these issues. And really the core element of the medicine, society, and culture concentration, the core elements are the foundational seminar, Foundations in Medicine, Society, and Culture, which is a 3-credit seminar first semester, which could be taken as an elective, but if you are a medicine, society, and culture concentration or concentrator, as Dr. Anderson-Fye sometimes calls it, you would have to take that foundational seminar. You would then construct your electives. You'd select them based on their relevance for medicine, society, and culture. And you might even create a unique second, instead of a clinical rotation second semester, what you might do is you might do a 1.5 hour medical humanities, social medicine focus in a setting like neighborhood family practice, for example, or some other settings that would really make sense for somebody who was focusing on social medicine, focusing on medical humanities. The research ethics concentration, structurally very similar. You work out the details when you get here, but there's a core seminar that is foundational to it. Beth 503, Issues in Research Ethics, Human Subjects Research Ethics. You would take that as one of your electives, but if you're going to be a research ethics concentration or concentrator, then you're going to need that as part of your core. The focus here is really thinking about human subjects research and other types of research and the kinds of ethical and regulatory issues that emerge. You might find yourself on a trajectory here to become part of the research ethics and regulatory apparatus, so IRB or NIH or one of these other areas. This is the concentration where, we've had lots of students who do this concentration and end up in research ethics and regulatory work even right after the MA. We want to emphasize that our master's is viewed as we view it as a companion or an on the way. It's a companion to a professional degree now or later, or it's an on the way to a PhD. But we have had students do it as a standalone and kind of find their way. That's not what it was designed to be, but if you're going to go that route, research ethics concentration is one of the better foci for you. Okay, our clinical affiliates. The clinic, Metro Health, the Department of Veterans Affairs, university hospitals. Like we said, you'll spend 160 hours total in these settings, 80 public, 80 private. You'll get a breadth of experience, right? So general floors, ICUs, step-down units. You'll have exposure to residents, to physicians, assistants, nurse practitioners, nurses, medical students, and other bioethics students. You'll go to an ethics committee meeting, at least one, and some other meetings like IRB meetings. And you'll have weekly discussions with the other students in bioethics and medical humanities who are rotating in that hospital setting. But Dr. Jeunnette, anything else you want to share about the rotations?
So I would add, part of these rotations is also understanding the culture of the institution you're at, the way they approach health, wellness, and medicine. And when you're in your second semester, it really becomes apparent the difference between the institution you were at the first semester and the institution you're at your second semester. And it's not that the culture or their policies or their approach, one is right and one is wrong, but they're different. And the history behind why they're different is interesting. And so when you're meeting weekly with your fellow students and the person leading your preceptor group, who often is a clinical ethicist or someone who sits on the ethics committee at that hospital, they can bring that knowledge to your weekly meeting and share with you why the culture is the way it is. And so that can also help enhance the learning within that clinical ethics rotations experience.
Excellent. So moving forward, Dr. Jeunnette, do you want to talk a little bit more about our study abroad electives?
Absolutely. So these can count as one of your 3 credit hour electives for the program. They, as you can see, they're 1 to 2 weeks. We allow students to take, these courses that they, as has been said, can go over winter break, spring break, or in May, just as the semester has ended. Students can go to Costa Rica, Granada, Spain, Paris, Netherlands. We've even done a course to the US national parks. We've gone to Yellowstone. We're looking at either returning to Yellowstone or another national park. Each course has its own focus. So it's not just a course focusing on bioethics in general, but it can be very specific. So for instance, a Netherlands course may focus specifically on public health or women's health, or their approach specifically to drugs or detention. The US National Park course that went to Yellowstone focused on the intersection of human health and environmental ethics. So, each course has its own very specific focus. Oftentimes students will say, I don't know which course to pick. They all sound interesting. And so I may say, students can pick a course based on location. They may pick the course based on a topic. They may pick a course based on the timing of it. But I tell students you can't pick a wrong course because all of the courses are wonderful.
They are, and one of the things that's really great about them is you get exposure to our international colleagues. So,
absolutely,
more on that should you find yourself in this program. But this is a great strength of our program, and these relationships have been developed over years and years, but they are great, and they really enhance the educational experience that our students get. We do have dual degree programs. We're going to blitz through this. The thing for you to know is that if you're interested in a dual degree, you need to apply to each program separately. You will be admitted or not into each program. If you're admitted into each program, you then can, and you'll indicate on an application that you're interested in the dual degree, then, in consultation with your advisor, you can approach the advisor from the other program, because each of these dual degrees has an advisor on each side. And then a determination will be made about your suitability for the dual degree. So you can see the list here. There are quite a few. A lot of students prefer to do their degrees one at a time. And you can see why, because you're taking on a big workload, and you're going to have to, kind of be a little crazy over this time that you're in the program. But they are outstanding values for the right students who are, kind of able to pull this off and wired the right way to not, be overwhelmed. Okay. Cleveland itself. I'm very happy to say that I play Words with Friends, okay? And there's a person I've been playing with for maybe 5-6 years who's in Davis, California. And we've used the chat function in Words with Friends to talk about different things over the years. Interesting person, older woman, I think probably in her 70s. She sent me a whole bunch of stuff about Fanny Singer, who apparently was just in Cleveland and who's Berkeley royalty, who was going on and on about how she cannot believe her mother established like the California food scene, but she cannot believe how nice it is here. And her Instagram stream now is filled with, wow, I was in the Rocky River Reservation. Wow, I just went out on Lake Erie for a pleasure cruise. Geez, I can't believe how good this restaurant is. It was really cool. And of course, my friend who's a bit of a California snob said, I admit I'm a California snob, but this looks so good, I think I might want to visit. Anyway, we have a lot here. The Cleveland Museum of Art, top freestanding art museum in the country by most rankings, not just USA Today. In fact, USA Today selected the University Circle in Cleveland as the top arts district in the country, which is amazing. Playhouse Square, 37,000 season ticket holders, most active performing arts venue outside of Broadway in the country. Cleveland Orchestra, on top 1, 2, or 3 in the world, depending on who you look at, what ranking you look at. Little Italy, which is right in the University Circle area, incredible history, interesting. Presti's is making my stomach growl right now. It's a great bakery, and it's too good. And then East 4th downtown, which is alive again. Of course, we have our sports teams. We have to add the Browns to this because they're not embarrassing anymore. But we've got our Indians, who will soon be Guardians. I actually like the change. I'm quite pleased about it. The Guardians ties to some really interesting sculptures from the 1930s that are on a major bridge right by Progressive Field. And of course, the Cavs, most people associate with LeBron. This is a good place to live. It's a good place to study. It's a great place to study, to be in University Circle and a graduate student. You can have a very good year here or more. And we have plenty of students who come to our program and just stay, which is a nice thing as well. Okay, application requirements. Nuts and bolts. Go ahead, Leah.
So just really quick. So as I'm going through this, if students want to enter questions in the chat, feel free to do that. So to have a complete application package, you're going to want to submit your transcript from all undergrad and grad programs. You're going to want to include a statement of purpose. The statement of purpose, what we're really looking for is your interest in bioethics and medical humanities and how this could fit into your career path. And that can include, I'm not sure how this fits into my career path. I'm still working on discernment. We also are looking for your CV or your resume and 2 letters of recommendation, including 1 from a faculty or professor.
Oops, sorry.
That's okay. Once we have your completed application, it's reviewed and interviewed, or your application's reviewed, and then you'd be interviewed by an admissions committee member from our department. And then once that is complete, a decision, once we have a completed application from start to finish, we typically can render an application within 2 to 3 weeks. The turnaround is pretty quick, provided it's not in the middle of a holiday or something like that.
But we're good about it. Grad Studies isn't quite as good about it, but you'll know from us what the decision is. All right, there's a timeline for you.
Yeah, so our first priority deadline is December 1st. If you can get your completed application in, meaning we have all of the elements for your application package in by December 1st, including those letters of recommendation, we can get you a decision from our department before the end of the year. For others, the other deadlines you can see there, including integrated graduate studies. So that's for current Case Western Reserve undergrads. If you were a junior and you're applying for the IGS program, the deadline is March 1. Priority 2 deadline is May 15th, and that is to be eligible for student assistantships. The actual student assistantship application deadline is June 1. Our final program deadline, if you want to start, the fall 22 deadline, that's a typo on that slide, is August 1st. And then classes would begin in August 22.
So Sarah, there's a question here from Sarah about IGS.
Oh, so the different about the application in regards to the IGS program, everything is the same. The only additional piece that an IGS student would have to submit is the PPOS, so the pre-program plan of study. If you want to email us, bioethics@case.edu, I can give you more details on the PPOS form and what we can send you the bioethics complete, what we would want on that form and what needs to be signed and the timing of that.
And Sarah,
more
the
details.
place, yes, and Sarah, the place to start for IGS, send that email, but also start with your undergraduate advisor, because
Absolutely.
they're sort of the first gatekeeper for IGS. Okay.
And we're going to be having an IGS open house coming up in November. And so you'll see some advertisements coming out about that pretty soon. And so we'll have more information specifically geared towards IGS.
Excellent. Other questions? Oops, there you go. We're happy to hang on if you want to. Okay, Jamie says, do you have to send an envelope sealed undergrad or in graduate degrees? Electronic is fine, right, Leah, for application material?
Yeah, so they actually can be unofficial transcripts uploaded directly into the application.
We prefer electronic.
Yeah, they can be electronic, uploaded directly into the application itself. They also can be emailed to bioethics@case.edu. They can also be sent to gradtranscripts@case.edu. So there's a couple of ways to send the transcripts in terms of your proof of degree for undergraduate and grad. Those have to go to grad studies to verify.
Yes, but they still prefer electronic, I think.
Yes.
This is the mode going forward, which is good because it's good for trees. Other questions?
We did get a question submitted ahead of the webinar, which I think is a good one for us to answer. So the question was, can this program be done remotely or online? And I think that's a really good question to answer. And the answer is no, we are an in-person program. And the reason for that is because our clinical rotations are done in person and in the hospitals, and the way our classes are set up, they're discussion based, they are done in person.
So we have, and we distinguish between virtual and online. We do have some courses that may be offered only virtually. For example, this semester, this coming semester in the spring, we're going to have a course on animal ethics that we couldn't really offer with one of our own primary faculty. And we're going to have a person from who's at MIT and Harvard, Lisa Moses, who's going to offer that course. But she's going to offer it, she lives on the East Coast, but she's going to offer it virtually. But that's the exception, not the rule. And as Dr. Jeunnette said, the in-person rotations are really central to our MA in bioethics and medical humanities experience. So we plan to keep it that way for the time being, at least.
So there's a question about prerequisites for the PhD program enrollment. Do you necessarily have to have an MSc as a prerequisite for the PhD program? Mark, do you want to answer that question?
You don't. Although you will probably, I mean, it depends on the applicant pool, but there's a chance you could be at a disadvantage against folks who have that. That being said, we have built into the program a way to scale folks up, get them up to speed in the event that they are coming into the program and need some, it's not remedial work, but needs some scaling up. But I would strongly recommend doing a master's before applying to the PhD. Yes, so another question, we don't limit our assistantships to only US residents, but keep in mind, our assistantships are partial tuition waivers. They are not traditional assistantships that come with stipends and full tuition coverage.
Yeah, so the way it basically works is a student assistantship means if you get a $5,000 partial tuition waiver, it would be split between fall and spring semester. So you would get $2,500 of a tuition waiver off of fall semester, $2,500 off of spring semester on your tuition bill. On your student bill, you would not see that money in a check, in a form of a check or anything like that.
Right. So we don't. We are happy to support international students as well.
Yes.
For sure.
Yeah. Regardless of domestic or international student status.
In fact, a couple of years ago, what did we have? 16 different countries of birth represented in our program, Leah?
Yeah.
I think it was 16.
Yeah.
So we are definitely a national and international program. We draw from all over.
I'm just going to make a last call for questions because we're over time. But if anyone has any further questions, they can always email us, bioethics@case.edu. Happy to answer your questions. And we could even set up a one-on-one meeting or on Zoom or a phone call to speak about your specific case and your specific application questions, and hope that you consider putting in an application with us for next year.
Yeah, and that's correct. It's not a full-time scholarship. Well, thank you, everybody. Appreciate your zooming into the webinar, and we're getting better and better at this because we do it so much, right? But we're happy to continue to engage with you. So, you know, shoot us an email at the addresses that Dr. Jeunnette mentioned. You see them there on your screen, and you know, we'll do our best to get back to you with the answer. And if we don't know the answer, we'll kick around and find out. Okay. All right. Well, we might see some of you in the program next year. Hopefully, we'll see all of you. But really good, even just virtually, to engage with you all. Okay. Thanks.